Greetings, class. Welcome to the fall semester 2025 Human Resource Management Compensation and Benefits 6123. This is a very, very interesting topic, close to many of us from different angles, from compensation perspective, managing strategic remuneration perspective, managing different kinds of talents. It'll be a very interesting course that we can jump in and learn a lot on how compensation and benefits are managed by different kinds of institutions. So before we dive into the course, a very quick summary about me. I love teaching, learning about human resources, leadership, business management, healthcare management, with probably a couple of decades in working healthcare institutions at different levels, program director, deeply rooted in technology, solution-oriented mindset, building high-performance teams, managing large enterprise complex projects. I have doctorate in business administration from University of Southwest, as well as double masters in totally different disciplines, geosciences and computer science. I'm a proud father of two kids. My oldest has earned his doctorate in pharmacy, and my younger one is in third year college in public health. I'm also passionate in running startups. The solution-oriented mindset comes into play, and oftentimes it results in bringing team together, how to orchestrate that team into fruitful goals by which we can bring scalable solutions in different industries. Now, enough about me. Let's jump into the textbook. The textbook is Remuneration and Talent Management by Dr. Basin. Some of you might be familiar with Dr. Basin. If not, connect him via LinkedIn. He's available in LinkedIn. He's a very prominent subject matter expert, often sought by large organizations and different institutions. He's a well-known expert in strategic remuneration, managing talent. He has decades of experience advising different kinds of organizations in designing like pay structures, which not only attract, but also retain the top talent, and also the pay structures aligned with business strategy. So in this course, we will be using his framework to explore how compensation is more than just a paycheck. How can we look compensation as a strategic tool for driving performance, for driving engagement, and also to ensure long-term organizational success? So we will look into the connection between different kinds of remuneration strategies, it's mouthful, and talent management, and how these concepts integrate into a broader human resource and business objectives. So before we dive in, think about this question. When you hear the term compensation or compensation and benefits, do you think of it as a cost to the company, or is it an investment in people? Both perspectives derive different results, and it will shape pretty much most of what we discuss in these coming chapters. So when you look at the course, The course is structured into 4 main modules, each focusing on a key area of remuneration and talent management. Module 1, which includes chapter 1 through chapter 4, discusses strategic foundations of remuneration and talent management. Here we set the groundwork. We will explore how remuneration strategies connect to business goals, organizational design, leadership capacity, and talent management fundamentals. That will organically lead into the second module, the talent identification, talent engagement, and retaining the talent. So here, as the module says, we will dive into finding the right talent. So you need to wear the hat of the owner of the business or somebody who is running a department, division, a large unit, business unit, or the company itself, right? How do you find the right talent? Not only you need to find the right talent, but you need to keep them engaged, keep them inspired, keep them motivated, right? And ensure that they're going to stay within your company. So we will cover what are the strategies that we can adopt from recruitment perspective. What are some of the engagement drivers that we need to keep in mind? And what are the retention frameworks that is being discussed in this textbook? Then we will go into the module 3, reward strategies and incentives. So you can retain talent only if you have the right reward system, which might include monetary as well as non-monetary. How you can design those systems to motivate performance and align with your business strategy. The last would be the last 3 chapters, chapter 14, 15, and 16. Here we would be thinking from seeing talent as a cost versus as a long-term investment. So we will explore empowerment strategies. We'll explore the role human resources would play in the career development, and oftentimes a return on investment on people initiatives. So throughout this course, you will notice that each module builds on the last one, starting with strategy and discussing implementation, and finally looking into how we can measure to understand the implementation has yielded the results. So as you all know, this is an 8-week course program. And in those 8 weeks, we have taken 2 chapters each so that we can dive deeper into each of the chapter, understand what those chapters are telling us, and making sure that we can apply the essence of those chapters in practice. The discussion questions and assignments will give us enough opportunities to put our understanding in practice. It will also give us opportunities to do research. So module 1 covers chapter 1 and 2. Module 2 focus on chapter 3 and 4. Module 3, chapters 5 and 6, so on and so forth till module 8, which is the week 8, covering chapters 15 through 16. So before we jump into the module 1, let's take a look at Dr. Basin. As I mentioned, connect Dr. Basin via LinkedIn. He will, if you message him, he will reply. You can ask very interesting questions on how he looks at talent management, compensation from his perspective, where he stands right now. So he is recognized internationally, especially in this field of remuneration strategy, executive pay, talent management, and how companies would build reward systems. So his research and consulting work bridge both theory and practice. And that's why his framework is very applicable in real world settings. So he is the chairperson of 21st Century, which is one of South Africa's largest remuneration and HR consulting firms. In addition, he has taught as professor and served as an external examiner for MBA and HR programs at various universities. And he has been part and parcel of building the next generation of human resources leaders. He has a lot of publications. He has a lot of books. He holds doctorate in commerce with focus areas in HR strategy, organizational development, and compensation models. And his academic grounding is combined with decades of industry experience. He's a very influential leader. He's well connected with different kinds of corporations, corporation boards, government agencies, through his consulting for implementing pay structures and HR policy management. He is also a very familiar face in South African business media, where he regularly discussed trends in pay, equity, and HR strategy, keeping both public and professional audiences fully informed. So Dr. Bazin brings a combination of academic rigor, industry experience, and a public thought leadership, making him an authoritative source for everything we are going to explore in this course. So I strongly recommend you connect with Dr. Bazin and have good conversation. And even some of the questions, some of the discussion questions that we would be going in detail and ask from his perspective on how he would be approaching the subject. So this week, we are going to focus on chapter 1 and chapter 2. This video lecture is about chapter 1, the context to remuneration, which is probably the right chapter to begin with. It will discuss strategy, organizational design, leadership, and talent management. So here we focus on building the foundational understanding of how remuneration would fit into the broader business and organizational context. So when we finish this chapter, you should be able to explain how strategy and innovation influence the remuneration. We'll explore how a company's strategic goal and its capacity for innovation shape its pay structures, their incentive programs, and also build a total reward strategy. Rewards is more than just a pay. For example, a business pursuing rapid innovation may design bonus structures that rewards creative problem solving and speed to market. You will also be able to describe the role of organization work design. What does that mean? That means the discussion will be focused on how is the work structured today? We know there are individual contributors. They will be reporting to project teams, meaning a team hierarchy exists. There are roles and responsibilities speaking for each job or a job group. There are reporting lines. All of those affect how people are compensated. So organizational design not only impacts efficiency, but also influences the fairness, the transparency, and the employee motivation in remuneration systems. Then we will look into the leadership capacity at different levels. We will look at how leadership needs change from frontline managers to senior executives. and how remuneration strategies can be aligned to attract, retain, and motivate leaders at each level. We will wrap this chapter by understanding talent management as a strategic business imperative, not just as an HR function, but how this would act as a driver of competitive advantage. Competitive advantage is a centralized theme throughout the MBA program. So, how do we see remuneration not in just isolation, either focusing on a particular job or a particular individual or a particular function, but as part of a broader talent strategy that includes succession planning, skills development, and employee engagement. So these outcomes will give you the lens to connect the pay structure to organizational success. Ensuring remuneration is not just an administrative process, but as a strategic lever. You will also be able to look into your own personal remuneration, how much you are paid, what value you bring to the institution, where are you at that institution, what is your function bringing to the bigger picture or a strategic role that the company is playing. All of those becomes critical as we go into the discussion of this chapter. So we will talk about the four corners of a fit for purpose organization. Now, in the textbook, you would see organization is spelled in European pronunciation and European way, Organization. When it comes to United States, it becomes, instead of S, it becomes Z. So when we talk about remuneration in a strategic context, we can't think of pay and benefits in isolation, because pay and benefits is for fulfilling a task which your organization is running. So it's part of a bigger organizational design. And in order for truly that to be effective, it must be aligned with what I like to call the four corners of a fit for purpose organization. So let's look at each one of them. First one is strategy and innovation. Strategy answers the question, where are we going? Innovation answers the question, how will we get there differently? How will we get there faster? Or how will we design a track that is better than our competition? So think of strategy as your GPS. It sets the destination, and innovation is that engine that helps you navigate faster and avoid the roadblock. So some of the latest GPS tools, they would have both built in. They will gather the strategy from you, and they will bring to your attention, there is a faster route available. Do you want to go through that faster route? Depending upon your preference. So it has both innovation and strategy built to it. Now, from a remuneration perspective, strategy should guide how we reward people. For example, if our strategy is to grow in a new market, we may tie incentives to market expansion milestones. If innovation is core, we might reward an idea generation, we might reward process improvements, we might reward patents or patents that has been filed. So the key point here is remuneration system which does not reflect strategy are like fuel you are putting into a wrong vehicle. It's wasted and misaligned. So the second concept here is organizational design. So organizational design is not just drawing boxes on an org chart. It's about creating a structure that supports the strategy and enables people to work efficiently. So good organization looks at reporting lines, the different decision-making authorities, the span of control, and the role clarity. Poor design would lead to duplication, confusion, frustration among team members, pay inequities, all of those. The larger the organization, the more probable duplication, confusion, pay inequities, and all of those things. Because unless the institution is completely wired from strategy, purpose, the optimized way of designing the different roles and functions, and it's a well-oiled machine by which the institution is moving towards its strategic goals. But if we design a flat structure to encourage collaboration, our pay system still reward only individual achievement. So then we will be sending mixed signals. So you cannot say a hierarchy is good or structure is good or bad. It all depends upon what the strategic goal and purpose of that company is. So well-designed organization, remuneration, so that the roles with higher complexity, broader decision-making, and greater strategic impacts are compensated accordingly. The third topic, or the third cornerstone, would be leadership. Leadership is the bridge between strategy and execution or implementation. Strong leaders translate the organizational vision into daily actions, inspire the teams, help them navigate the change. Leadership capacity must present at all levels. Whether you are a frontline supervisor or a manager or an associate director or a director or an executive director or a senior executive, you should have different kinds of leadership capacity. So we sometimes misunderstand or even underestimate the leadership gap at mid-level management, where most employee experience is shaped. From a remuneration perspective, we must ensure that leadership roles are not just financially rewarding, but also offer growth opportunities, recognition, and influence. For example, leadership incentive plans might be tied to both performance metrics and people engagement scores in order to encourage balanced leadership. The fourth one is the talent management. This is the foundation of sustainable organization. So talent, attracting the right people, developing the people, keeping them engaged, and retaining them. It integrates workforce planning, recruitment, development, succession planning, and retention strategies. So remuneration here is not just about pay. It's also about benefits, career progression, and culture. For example, an organization that values innovation should identify high potential innovators early, provide them with special project opportunities, and reward them with recognition and career acceleration, not just a salary bump. In other words, talent management ensures we are paying attention to not only those employees we have today, but also to the leaders and experts we will need tomorrow. So with these four cornerstones, strategy and innovation, organizational design, leadership, talent management, when they work in harmony, you create a truly fit for purpose organization or a purpose driven organization. So, remuneration in that case would become a strategic tool. It's not an administrative task that somebody does year over year, going through a mechanical way of performance management, performance measurement, 5% raise, 3% raise, so on and so forth, right? It stops being reactive. It focuses on pay people what the market says, exercise and become a proactive driver of organizational success. So let's take a few examples. Let's take Tesla. Tesla's strategy was to disrupt the automotive industry by leading in electric vehicles or EVs. What was their innovation? Their innovation is not like building a car, because that's already been solved. Their innovation was twofold. How do I build a battery that is going to be competitive in the market space, that's going to bring confidence with the consumers, and that's going to last for a long time? The second innovation is their software. If you drive Tesla, the only reason you might probably not get rid of Tesla is because of their software and the intelligence they bring to each and every car. Now, let's come to remuneration. So Tesla offers performance-based stock options in order to tie the ambitious production and delivery targets. And this aligns reward with innovation and growth goals. When you tie performance-based stock options, you are not only touching just the employees focused from a sales perspective, but also you are tying every employee working in the company, because they're all motivated by a higher stock price. Now, when we take a pharmaceutical company, for example, let's say if this company's strategy is to expand into emerging markets. So their innovation can be, how do I develop low cost of essential medicines that are needed by the market at large? So the remuneration in that case may be a bonus program for country managers tied to regulatory approvals and speed to market. Because pharmacy, we all know, in order to get the approval, it'll take years and years and years. So if those two challenges that would slow down the company is tied to the remuneration, you bet the managers, the employees, they would all work synchronously to see how each of those elements can be fast-tracked. So now let's look deeper into the strategy and innovation. So let's start thinking about why some companies thrive for decades while others fade away. If you look closely, there's often a common thread between those companies. They have a clear strategy and they continually innovate. Strategy tells us where to compete and how to win. And innovation ensures we don't get left behind when the world changes, which we all know it inevitably does, right? So think of strategy like a map, and innovation is the vehicle that lets you navigate the different terrain. Without one, you wander aimlessly or stall when the road changes. So strategic decision and innovation together drives the sustainable competitive advantage. This is not just a theory. Those who have completed different courses in MBA, you have already learned that both are critical elements by which a company achieves their sustainable competitive advantage. It is so critical in 21st century that any company, irrespective of the size or achievements, is always under threat. Competitors can copy the processes, match your price, replicate your technology, and can come up with better, smarter, and more effective and affordable for the consumers to buy and move forward. Let's take Apple. If they had stopped the first iPod, there would be a trivia question today. Instead, they continuously innovated. iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, AirPods, each product building on the previous one, but also redefining the market space, maybe capturing different market segments or segmenting those markets more effectively. Now let's think about an interesting connection. The different levels of work theory and innovation. So not all innovation happens the same way at every level of an organization. When you look at the description in the textbook from levels of work theory, at higher levels, on longer time, the operational stability, the ambiguity, the thought process for jumping into riskier and riskier innovation is more critical compared to lower levels of work. So, for example, as an individual contributor working as an analyst, your boundary is completely focused on the work that you have been given to do. Whereas the CEO, on the other hand, he or she will be thinking, how do we shift from being a manufacturing company to being a services company? The operational line supervisor and employees have no clue what the CEO is thinking and how he's shaping the company over a period of 5 to 10 years. The department head, on the other hand, might be completely focused on the implementation of Six Sigma and other quality programs in order to reduce the production errors by 15%, or implementing quality checks. The team member would be focused in gathering their certification, so on and so forth. So depending upon the levels of work, the innovation, the roadmap, the focus areas, the objectives, everything will be totally different. So when you look at innovation, the textbook talks about 4 types of innovation. Even though in many contexts, we all mix innovation into one bucket. Let's look at the first one, the radical innovation. The radical innovation speaks about the industry-changing innovation. When Netflix moved away from rentals to streaming, that was completely unheard of in the industry. You as a consumer used to go into the Netflix box, pick up the DVD, or you subscribe to a DVD. Now it has become a streaming service or streaming subscription. The next one would be like Uber. Uber turned personal cars into taxis, you know. So it is risky, but the payoff can be enormous. So those are all fall into the radical, it radically transforms the industry. Then comes the semi-radical innovation or a partial radical innovation. So it builds on what already exists, but changes expectations. Think of hybrid cars. They're still cars, but fundamentally different in energy use. So it's a semi-radical innovation. The third one is still lower, organic or incremental innovation. You're making small, steady improvements. So iPhone camera gets a little sharper every year. Microsoft tweaking their Office 360 products, whether it's Excel, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, so on and so forth, adding new features. They are all incremental innovation. Then comes efficiency innovation. So efficiency innovation don't necessarily make a product new, but they make it either cheaper, faster, high quality, better to produce, all of those things. So all of the quality advancements, whether it's lean manufacturing coming from Toyota, all of them fall under efficiency innovation. So your chosen strategy determines the type of innovation you should focus on, right? So let's take a look into the company from a bigger picture. If you're competing on cost leadership, meaning you're a Walmart or your Southwest Airlines, you are completely focused on innovation, but focused from an efficiency standpoint. It's doing the same thing again and again and again, but this time cheaper, faster, more reliably. Now, if you're a Tesla or Louis Vuitton, you are competing on differentiation. How do you differentiate your product among all the other similar products? So your innovation here is focused on uniqueness. It's either radical or semi-radical. That's what sets you apart. So now, if that is the goal of the company, people working for that company, how would the remuneration be? The remuneration will be appreciated either on a radical front or a semi-radical front, or it can be efficiency or incremental, right? Now, the big challenge is if the entire culture of the company is following efficiency, now you, on the other hand, is coming up with radical or a semi-radical innovation, good luck to you. So that's where you think about how the culture of the organization, how the strategy of the organization, how the roadmap of the organization is linked to the innovation and the remuneration. So always alignment to the company, ensuring you are adaptable to the culture, you understand the bigger picture, where the executive leaders of the organization are driving the company would be the optimal way by which you would be able to present your strategy and your case from a remuneration standpoint. So what would be the takeaway from this? If you only remember one thing from this section, what would be that? It's that strategy and innovation are inseparable partners. In fact, my thesis was in strategy and innovation. My specialization in the doctorate of business administration was strategy and innovation. So this is a very close to my heart topic. So I'll really look forward for discussions and assignments where you are bringing a true out-of-the-box experience for a faculty member like myself. So we learned very clearly strategy sets the direction, innovation ensures you can keep moving in that direction, and the changes in the direction happens when the market shifts. And organizations that fail to connect the two, whether they innovate without a strategic anchor or have a strategy without an ongoing innovation, will eventually be overtaken. So now let's go to the next topic, the different kinds of levels of work. We basically touch the high levels of this, why some organizations run like clockwork and others seem to be stuck in a constant game, who is supposed to do what. So Elliot Jacques, a Canadian psychologist, he's also an organizational theorist, observed that a well-functioning organization naturally fall into strata. What is strata? Strata is nothing but layers. And these strata are based on time span of discretion. Time span of discretion. It's just a fancy way of saying how far into the future your role requires you to think and plan. So natural strata based on a time span would be like a frontline worker focusing on the task that needs to be completed by end of the day or the week, whereas a mid-level manager might think in terms of months or quarters or even like an annual budget, whereas a senior leader might be envisioning where the organization need to be in 5 to 10 years from now. And this time span defines not just the work, but the decisions you are expected to make. Oftentimes, I have seen problems arise when a frontline worker think like a senior executive. If he or she is not focused on what they need to complete by the end of the day or week, and often discusses on whether the company should be in this industry or another industry, how will the shift happens 5 to 10 years, then that upsets the balance that has been set up in that institution. Maybe the frontline worker is a new hire, or maybe they have leadership potential that the organization need to tap at a higher level, or maybe they are showing signs by which they can be developed into a solid leader with those inherent ideas. So Jacques also proposed that each level requires a greater degree of cognitive complexity. That's complexity. It's not about the IQ in the traditional sense. It's about the ability to juggle multiple variables, anticipate future challenges, and design systems that work over time. So imagine playing chess. At the lower levels, you're only focused on the next move. But as you go higher and higher, you're thinking about 5 moves ahead, 10 moves ahead, 15 moves ahead, and how this game is going to evolve, and how would you plan those early steps accordingly. So that's why promoting someone simply because they are good or they're great or they exceeds their achievement in their current job doesn't always work. If they haven't yet developed the cognitive skills for a higher time span, they will struggle. They will not be able to produce the same level of work products that they have produced in the level before. So now, what happens when the roles are misaligned? When people or when employees' cognitive capacity is not matched with authority and accountability, bad things can happen. I wouldn't say bad. It's like completely misaligned. It's like a chaos. So there will be role confusion. Nobody knows who is really responsible for what. There will be bottlenecks, senior leaders literally getting buried in tactical work instead of focusing on strategic issues, poor delegation, managers either hold on too much or delegate without clarity, leading to errors and frustrations. A classic example would be if your VP, vice president, is spending most of their time approving expense reports or micromanaging daily schedules, they are stuck in a lower stratum than their role requires. Which means there is no one in the organization who is thinking about a 3-year strategy, a 5-year strategy. So why this matters for innovation strategy? When we link this back to the core discussion that's presented in this slide, the connections become very clear. If your leaders are stuck in the wrong time horizon, meaning 1 day, 2 day, a week, or even a quarter, your innovation will also match that. It'll be focused in short-term fixes instead of long-term breakthroughs. So aligning levels of work with people's capabilities ensures that each layer of the organization is solving the right type of problems for the right time horizon. So let's now talk about organization and work design. From a design process, you need to build the leadership team. You need to clarify the strategy. You need to ensure that the structure aligns with the strategy. You have clear roles defined. You are integrating the performance or compensation systems with it. And you're linking the compensation or remuneration plans accordingly. So let's take a tech startup. They secured funding to expand into healthcare. They first onboarded a chief medical officer to ensure the credibility in the sector before adjusting the rest of the structure. A logistics firm, on the other hand, has to clearly define the strategy, the next day delivery, right? And the next day delivery should inform every other decision making, the warehouse locations, the vehicles that they need, the route that drivers would be taking, the customer service intensity and the nature, all of those. When we look from designing the structure, a hospital group moved from a geographic structure to a service line model. Now, oncology, cardiology, orthopedics can have like a designated strategic plan and strategic leads. Defining roles. In a pharmaceutical company, brand managers were given clear accountability for launch plans, while the medical affairs focused solely on scientific credibility, reducing the overlap and conflict. Integrate performance systems. A consulting firm introduced quarterly role scorecards aligned to strategy, replacing vague annual reviews. Linking the compensation, the bonus structure, which is very typical in a service-based organization or a sales-driven organization. How does it shift from a total revenue to a margin-based performance supporting the strategy to target higher value clients. Let's focus on some kind of myths that exist. The first myth would be organization design is just redrawing the org chart. So you can use today any AI tools, proximity or Google AI tools like Gemini or ChatGPT, and you can have beautiful organizational chart designed, right? But that wouldn't solve your problem. So if you look at a large bank, if they announced a reorg by changing the reporting lines, but they left the old culture of decision-making bottleneck untouched, there is no value. Employee frustration still remains the same or more now because there's nothing that actually improved. Second myth might be hiring more people, right? Without absolutely aligning roles and levels of work, adding people can only create duplication and confusion. So why does all of this thing matters? It's a very, very interesting read in the textbook, which would bring different perspectives in mind. So when you combine levels of work theory with thoughtful organizational design, you will be able to get the measurable improvements, faster decision-making, less micromanagement, higher engagement. And there are so many examples that can be put together. Since I'm coming from healthcare, if I think about a multi-hospital or multi-specialty or a multi-discipline hospital, if they're struggling to roll out a new electronic health record system, then I can say that the department heads were making decisions about long-term system architecture, and the restructuring did not fully realize the roles and responsibilities so that the EHR system can be rolled out much faster. And so how will all of these work would align so that the EHR can be effectively rolled out? So you can say, in a nutshell, the structure is strategy made visible, but if you don't get the work levels and the design right, your strategy will only stay on the paper. That will lead us into our next topic, structure and working relationships. So when we talk about structure, we are just not talking about those pretty boxes and the lines connecting. And you look at, if you're at the top, wow, you have a lot of boxes underneath, and be proud of that, right? That org chart, that's not the structure. We are actually talking about how work flows from one unit to another, how decisions are being made, and how people interact to deliver value. So when you look at the design parameters, geography, legislation, technology, what do you mean by geography? Where your teams are, where your customers are, where the supply chains are, it will all bring the shape structure more aligned. For example, a retail chain operating in both rural and urban areas, they might need separate management layers to address very different customer expectations and logistics challenges. From a legislation perspective, compliance with local labor laws, the regulations that every hospital system or healthcare has to comply with, industry-specific mandates, they all dictate certain reporting relationships or approval chains. For example, a pharmaceutical company must have certain compliance officers reporting directly to the board in some countries. Technology. the level of automation, the intensity of communication, the way they manage data, information, and all the other systems, operational systems, everything influence how many layers you need where decision making happens. So cloud collaboration tools may allow global teams to function without the geographic managers, reducing the hierarchy. Let's look at the next one. Business processes from value chain. So every structure should reflect how value is created for the customer. In a hospital, the value chain might start with patient intake, move to diagnosis, the treatment, the recovery, and finally the discharge. And each stage need a clear accountability. The nurse who calls your name, the nurse who hand you into the patient room, the nurse who come and ask you questions regarding how you're feeling, why you are there, what medications you are taking, how is your experience, what are the symptoms, and the physician who is coming and putting all of these things together and creating a plan for you, and the nurse who will walk you out, and the front office person who is going to give you the next appointment. All in totality brings that 360-degree experience for you. So if the structure doesn't align the value chain, you get gaps or overlaps, leading to inefficiency, leading to customer frustration. So in my previous example, what if the physician comes and call your name? What if the physician asks you a few questions and the nurse come in and take you to the vitals and all of it? So all messed up, right? All different players. That'll create frustration. And there it shows the structure and the value chain is not aligned correctly. The next step is the design criteria, where you have clear boundaries, how duplications can be removed, how decision-making can be empowering, which are closer to the customers or customer experience. Clear boundaries. Everyone should know what is there to decide and what is there someone else to decide. So a sales manager should know they own pricing within a certain range, but discounts because they require executive approval. Two departments doing the same work is wasting resources and creating confusions. Decision-making near customer would be empowering the people closest to the customer who understand the customer to make decisions, speeding up the service and improving the satisfaction. And empowering those employees would bring long-term success. So an airline empowering the gate agents to issue the travel vouchers without needing the supervisor approvals, especially when your flight is delayed, may reduce the passenger complaints. So the best structures are invisible to the customer. They only see that front interaction, the seamless service, but behind the scenes, the structure has to match with how the work is done and delivered. Right people making the right decisions at the right time. Now let's take a look at the leadership capacity. So when we think about the leadership, many people would think leaders as, wow, C-level people. CEO is a leader. Or some kind of like a military leader. Or the leader of a state, leader of a nation. But in fact, leadership is not just at the top level hierarchy. And if the organization is effective, they will cultivate leadership capacity at every level of the organization. In MD Anderson, we have Leadership Institute, which teaches you how to lead oneself, how to lead other people, how to lead the leaders, and finally, how to lead the organization as a whole. So leadership is not defined by position, but leadership is defined by influence. A frontline nurse or a project coordinator or a team lead can demonstrate leadership by taking initiative, by solving problems, by listening to others, by inspiring others, by modeling the way for others. So let's take a manufacturing plant. So let's assume a machine operator who noticed a recurring defect and organizes a solution without being told is exercising leadership. Me and my wife, we take regular walks in the morning, and I saw a water bottle on our walkway. Was there day one, day two, but day three, something inside me have to model picking up and emptying the water bottle, squeezing it out, and recycling it effectively. Of course, I wore a gloves and so leadership is not in your professional spectrum. Leadership is in your personal life. Leadership is when dealing with others, dealing with the environment, dealing with pets, for example. They fully understand the concept of leadership, the inherent leadership that you bring to them. So when the leadership is distributed across levels, organizations will respond faster to change because decisions and actions are not bottlenecked at the top. And different levels, granted, requires different skills and different knowledge. So frontline leadership is focused on task execution, coaching team members, and maintaining the morale. The mid-level leadership would be balancing the operational delivery with strategic alignment, translating the big picture goals into daily work. Whereas senior leadership would be setting the vision, shaping the culture, influencing across the organization, and navigating the complex stakeholder relationship. Now, there are so many styles of leadership. There is formational leadership, laying the foundation, building systems, building the norms, building the processes. Like me as a startup founder, have to position everything for the entire company. So which means policies, procedures, recruiting team, identifying the product, where our core value proposition is, how do we connect with customer, how do we influence others, all of those things. The next leadership style is transmissional leadership to ensure knowledge, culture, and vision are clearly communicated across the organization. The third one is transactional leadership, managing by clear agreements, rewards for meeting expectations, and setting consequences if those expectations are not met. Me as an adjunct faculty, grading the assignments, ensuring that the students can keep up with the rigor and complying with the assignments and the consequences if they are not doing so. Then comes transformational leadership. They are truly inspiring and motivating followers to exceed expectations through vision and personal engagement. A nonprofit leader, or most of the leaders that we have read autobiographies, they all would be rallying a community around a cause. Then comes transcendental leadership, leading with a purpose that goes beyond the organization, which are tied to values, ethics, and societal contributions. So hospital CEO who sometimes frame organizational success in terms of community health, equity of care, not just the financial outcomes. Now let's take a look at developing leaders. We often use the word capability and competence. but they're actually very different concepts. It is used interchangeably. Understanding the difference is critical for putting the right leaders in the right roles. What is capability? Capability is the innate ability to handle complexity. Capability refers to a person's natural capacity to deal with a certain level of complexity in problem solving, decision making, and perspective taking. Competence, on the other hand, they're learned abilities. They're technical skills, domain knowledge, interpersonal behaviors that make someone effective in their role. Both capability and competence must match the complexity of the role. If competence is high, but the capability is low, the person might do fine in a stable environment. But when complexity spikes up, the leader will struggle. Now, if it's the other way, that means capability is high, but competence is low. The person might have a great potential, but needs significant time to build skills before they can become effective. Now, let's take a look at how do we build leadership capacity. So, leadership capacity isn't something you can build overnight. It's not about sending someone to a 1 day or 2 day or a week workshop and calling them as they're good leaders. It's about taking strategic, layered approach that connect the organization's needs with the individual growth and trajectory. It involves understanding the landscape before development, which is the assessment. Start by looking at the environment in which the leader operates. Ask questions. What are the strategic goals of the organization? How volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, we call it as a VUCA analysis, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous analysis. Look at the landscape. Identify external and internal factors, the industry trends, the competitive pressures, internal cultures, and leadership gaps. Requirements, what leadership looks in your context. Do leaders need to be strong in operational discipline, strategic vision, change leadership, or all three, right? Where do you put the emphasis, capability or competence? Now, when you think about develop beyond content into integration. Development is not just about delivering the content. It's content plus process. And it must be integrated into the organization's talent strategy. There should be succession planning, performance management, career pathing, all of those to be effective. Finally, let's look at the 3D leadership model, the transactional, transformational, and transcendental leadership, which goes transcendental leadership, which goes beyond inspiration, taps into values, purpose, and meaning, transcendental. Taps into values, purpose, meaning, aligning personal fulfillment with organizational mission, where you can shape cultures. So in short, building leadership capacity is about creating leaders who are not only competent in skills, but is also capable of navigating the complexity, inspiring transformation, and aligning the purpose with performance. Without this strategic approach, leadership pipelines run dry, and so does organizational resilience. Now, let's quickly review the talent management. Talent management, many of us think that it is a function of human resources. Absolutely not. It is a core business strategy. In a competitive environment, the ability to place the right talent in the right role at the right time can be the difference between organizational success and failure. So how do we ensure the right talent, right place, and right time? It's all about strategic workforce planning. It's not hiring for today's needs, but forecasting the skills and roles that will be essential in future. It's about agility. It's about ability to relocate talent quickly in response to market changes or internal shifts. So talent capacity is connected to competitive advantage. So think about talent capacity as like the company's engine power. So two companies might have similar strategies, but the one with higher capability, flexibility, and engagement will always execute better. When it comes to principles of ownership, managers own talent. Leaders must see that talent management is part of their role. They should constantly mentor, develop, and make strategic placement decisions. Employees, they should own growth. They should be proactive in seeking development, feedback, and opportunities. Now, culture as the value proposition. A strong culture is both a magnet and glue for talent. It attracts people who resonates with organization's values. It retains high performers by creating belonging, purpose, and growth opportunities. So if you take companies like Google, they're well known for their cultures as they are for their products and services. And that's a deliberate talent strategy. Now let's take a look at how all of these comes together. Talent management is most effective when it is completely integrated, meaning it's not done in isolation. It's coordinated, strategic process that connects workforce planning, employee development, and leadership. So this is human capital planning is the strategic forecasting to understand the workforce needs. It involves current capabilities versus future needs. It identifies critical roles and potential skill gaps. It creates succession plans for the key positions. People action planning turns strategy into execution. People leadership, it is the engine that drives talent management forward. It's about leaders coaching and mentoring employees. It's creating a psychologically safe environment for innovation. It's holding leaders accountable for developing and retaining the talent. So when these three elements, planning, action, and leadership, when they are integrated, talent management becomes a continuous cycle of alignment, growth, and retention. So the result is an organization that can adapt quickly, innovate consistently, and sustain long-term performance. Now let's take a look at some of the practical talent planning steps. Define required status, meaning, is your vision clear enough? You're asking, what will our workforce need to look like, deliver on our business strategy in the next 1 to 3 years? Roles, skills, competence, leadership capacity, diversity, and inclusion goals. Look at the current status. Conduct an honest assessment of your existing talent pool. Skills inventory, performance reviews, employee engagement, and retention data. Document the gaps. Compare the current state with the required state. Skills, leadership readiness, headcount, employee motivation or engagement. Now develop plans, hiring plans, training plans, succession plans, restructuring the roles to better align with strategy, and finally measure and review. Talent planning is not just once and done activity. It is a continuous activity that you need to regularly track. So in short, The practical talent planning is a cycle. It defines where you want to be, understand where you are, identify the gap, take action, and review continuously. This turns talent management from a theoretical exercise into a driver of measurable results. Now, let's wrap this up with a big picture. Imagine you are building a house. You have got the budget, you have the budget for the best doors, finest tiles, luxury kitchen. But if the foundation is not solid, if the blueprint is not clear, those upgrades won't make the house last. And that's what remuneration strategy would be looking like. Without the strategic context, without knowing the design of the organization, the leadership vision, and the talent management framework, the pay decisions are just expensive decorations. When we have clear strategy, a well-designed organization, strong leadership, and integrated talent management, pay becomes more than just a number on a paycheck. It becomes a message. We value your contribution. We see your potential, and we are building a future together. I have seen teams where money alone couldn't keep people engaged. But when that money was tied to growth opportunities, when that money is tied to clear career paths and capable leadership, people didn't just stay for the sake of staying, they thrived. They helped the organization transform. Organization exceeded the goals that they wanted to expect. So remember, pay without a context is cost. Pay with context is an investment. So that concludes our chapter 1, the context to remuneration. I hope you at least got the foundational principles, how remuneration is tied to the strategic part and the growth of the organization, and how it plays a key role in remuneration, not as um, as an expense, but a meaningful investment that has been well thought out by the organization. So see you in class for chapter 2. Enjoy chapter 1.